My name's Michael Brown. I live in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I work for the government with the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, cool. How is COVID-19 affecting your state and place of work?
Two very good questions. My state is being affected in the same way that I think a lot of other states are being affected. The difference, where I live in the state of Maryland, and our governor is I think he's the chairman or the president of the National Governors Association. So a lot of the work that he's doing is very progressive. He's leaning in and trying to make sure that the residents are safe. So I know that if you go into a supermarket right now, not just in Maryland, but also in the surrounding DC area where Washington is and Virginia is, it's a requirement to wear a mask. If you're out doing non-essential activity, and how that's determined, I haven't read the entire regulation because I haven't gone out. But if you're out where you shouldn't be, I know they're administering $1,000 fines for people in public that are not taking appropriate precautions to keep themselves and others around them safe from the virus. But I'm pretty pleased with how the state is managing things and taking it very seriously. We have 3 kids, and the kids are all home from school because the state has made a determination. The Board of Education for the county has made the determination to keep them home through at least May 15th. They've been home originally, it was the end of March, then it was the middle of April, and now it's the middle of May. So instead of just canceling everything at once, what they did was they decided to do it in phases. So now that we're coming up to May at the end of the week, we might get another extension on the stay-at-home order. So we'll see. So that's all the stuff on the state and on the home front. With work, it's affecting me because I'm teleworking now 100% full-time. I'm staying home 100% full-time. And by staying home, I'm using digital tools more often, like this one we're on right here with Zoom.
Yeah.
GoToMeeting. I'm using Microsoft Teams. I'm using FaceTime and all these different tools that my office has known about, but we haven't used on a frequent basis. So it's really good because we've actually shown how flexible we can be under these conditions. And the work that I'm doing right now is in a small office called the Office for Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention. And while it's not necessarily directly related to the health crisis of what's going on right now, we are looking at what effects this could have on the potential for future violence. Because right now, a lot of people are getting unhappy. There's individuals who are now, starting with social distancing, are also socially isolated. And social isolation could be a risk factor for somebody who might be, looking for a reason to carry out a violent act. We're trying to be as proactive as we can to make sure that folks are remaining connected with each other, and we're making sure that people recognize the value of connecting. So, things don't escalate into a dangerous situation down the line.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. You mentioned the $1,000 fine thing. Do you think that will actually make people value social distancing and want to stay home and away from public?
I think it depends on the individual situation. I think that some people that have to earn a living and, have to be physically out of their home to go to be out of their home, might be in a very tough spot. And whether or not there's a risk of a fine that's out there, it may not deter them from doing some things that, they want to do anyway. Like if people, you're allowed to go to the grocery store, but if you're already out and you go to other stores, or if you're out in public places and you're limiting and you're not limiting your exposure out publicly, you put yourself at risk. But generally, I think Americans really like their freedom, and they're going to do what they're going to want to do. And, the fines could present a deterrent, but there's also fines for speeding on the highways, and people still speed on the highways sometimes at risk of hopefully not getting caught.
Yeah, I think that's very, okay. How much of your office is working from home, and when do you think you'll go back?
I think we'll go back when it's safe to go back. I think with the work of the White House Coronavirus Task Force and the science community and their ability to tell us that, there are reasons to go back to work, then we'll go back to work physically again. My personal opinion is if there's still not a vaccine that's out there, I'm going to do everything I can to minimize my exposure to protect my family and my coworkers and my friends. So my office has been teleworking. We actually, the week of, let me get the dates right. The week of March 9th, my office made a decision, hey, let's have people stay home and telework 3 days a week. And by 2 days later, we said, forget that. Like, what's the point of going into the office 2 days a week? You know, like there's risk all the time. So by the end of that week, that Friday the 13th, we were off and we've been home ever since. I want to say we're approaching 50 days already.
Do you think teleworking promotes a challenge to your job?
I think it does. I think it's nice to have human contact and to be able to look to somebody across the table face to face to be able to engage. But I think everybody is in the same situation and we're working through it together. The challenge is that for communities that don't have the ability to telework, or communities that don't have the ability to use FaceTime or Zoom or GoToMeeting or any other online platform, they're the ones that are affected the most. A, because they might not be able to carry out their work, but B, because there's an isolation factor, which I think also has a health effect on some people.
Yeah. How will this impact your area of work in the federal government in the near and far future?
I think we talked about that a little bit already. I think that that's okay. I think that it does force us in a healthy way to learn how to be more flexible. And I think that if there might be some short-term costs with finding ways to bring the services that we offer online, so there might be some startup money that we have to spend to take, for example, a presentation that we were going to deliver to 200 people in person, and how do we automate that? But maybe there's no cost, maybe there's less cost, because for a conference of 200 people, you don't have to buy airfare for people as well. So I think that the financial analysis after this is going to be very interesting, not just in the government, but in any industry, about how they're able to carry out their business operations, to be able to, from the private sector, for them to be able to bring money in, but also in the private and public sector on what money is going out. So I think that that's going to be a longer term question. Some businesses, as you know, are just closing down altogether, and there's a major impact. But I think there are some government services. I think most government agencies right now are starting to look into ways to be able to still carry out their important safety missions in a virtual space.
Okay, yeah. Has COVID-19 caused any complications regarding Homeland Security that you haven't seen before?
I can't speak for all of Homeland Security, because Homeland Security includes a lot of different spaces. Homeland Security includes aviation security, like TSA at the airport. It includes border security and immigration security, like you'll see on the southern border of the United States. It affects the Secret Service, which is part of the Homeland Security mission, who protects the president. It includes the work that we do to stop violence in my office that I was talking about earlier. So I think it really depends on which specific piece of Homeland Security you're speaking with. FEMA is part of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And FEMA right now is out there trying to find ways to deliver grant monies to communities that are directly affected as well. So there's so many different impacts in so many different ways. When speaking about my direct office, I think our mission still continues to go forward, and we're continuing to do the things we do. But I think the scale of this for the entire Department of Homeland Security and for the government as a whole, for the world as a whole, I think it's forcing some innovation in a healthy way, but it's definitely causing a massive disruption to people's lives, not just their jobs, but just the humanity of everything. That's where we want to make sure that we come out on the other side of this stronger than we were going into it.
Yeah. You mentioned how isolation might like lead to more terrorism, or not necessarily more terrorism, but like, I don't know. You just talked about that. Is that something you guys are actively dealing with? Do you think that's likely to happen?
To be clear, when I mentioned isolation, the impact, I said it could be a risk factor.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. It's a risk factor that could increase in individuals' likelihood to moving forward toward violence, but there's no one factor. There's no one individual factor that would cause somebody to do something. But if somebody loses a job, if somebody loses their income, if somebody doesn't have connectivity, and these risk factors compiled together begin to accumulate, there's some reason for us to evaluate the situation. I think there have been some examples in the news where some people are lashing out in different kinds of ways, and I won't get into those right now on the call. But there are some ways that, we want to make sure are not magnified by the crisis. So we're working with our stakeholders as much as we can to get them information that they can use to help people stay connected.
Okay, yeah. And one more question. Sorry, it's kind of short, 20 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay. Do you think that it is a wise decision? You can't really talk. Okay, wait. Let me rephrase it. Do you think it's a bad, or what is your view on our economy opening in May?
I think there's much smarter people than me to make that decision.
Okay.
I look to my friends who are doctors and scientists, not just working for the government, but working for private practices, and I rely on them for that type of advice. From what I do know, like you and your parents and anybody that's watching the news right now, there is no cure for this right now. So a reopening of the government does present some risk. So any reopening plan from a state governor needs to come with a detailed set of steps for others to abide by to make sure that the risk of the coronavirus doesn't grow and expand and we have another second wave as some people are predicting in the future. But again, not for me to make that prediction.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, thank you for joining me and letting me ask questions.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you, Joey.